We are currently at elbaph arc's most critical moment yet, about to learn how King Harald was wiped out, and since we learned he was actually a knight of God at the time, it makes the situation all the more interesting, since how could Loki or whomever did so destroy him, despite the immortality and insane strength that he had regardless. But most importantly, we should focus on if Loki really did eat elbaf's legendary devil fruit, or did the person whom we witnessed approaching it stole it, and could it have been the sun god Nika fruit all along? I suppose it's possible, but my theory has been it is actually a winged serpent mythical zoan, which is basically the Hellfire serpent from the Harley mural, and I've explained why in a previous video, but this time let's take it one step further, as I drew how I imagine Loki's transformation will look like in its hybrid form. So let's take a look. While it probably won't look exactly like this, there is no chance it will be this way in every detail, to be honest. But every element in this drawing has a reasoning behind it, so let's analyze it. To begin, I want to emphasize there is a high chance, even though Loki does turn out to be a serpent, that the wings are not gonna be featured. But in my previous video, I've explained my reasoning as to why I think he will sport wings. But one hint would be his tattoo, which seems to resemble wings, as you can see. If he does have wings, they could be a different style from my drawing, and here are some examples from Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! As to how they could look like, and keep in mind he could have extra sets of wings, given that the serpent is supposed to be massive. So this design is also inspired by a very strong monster from Yu-Gi-Oh! The Thief King Bakura's monster, Diabound Colonel. Notice how Diabound's beard looks like Loki's as well. Furthermore, Typhon from ancient Greek mythology also has this appearance, as well as long hair and a beard like Loki. To be precise, let's read a few words about Typhon. Typhon was a gigantic, monstrous being born by Gaia after the annihilation of the giants. His size and strength was far greater than those of Gaia's other children, and as we know, Loki mocks Haryudin to oblivion. His outstretched arms reached from east to west. Fire came out of his eyes and his body was covered in wings. Now, this detail about the eyes is very important, because I have assumed that Loki will have the power to shoot beams from his eyes. Let me explain why I made Loki's eyes visible through the bandages wrapped around them. First of all, Loki's snake-like eyes are obviously special, and there is no chance we won't see them during the battle when things get serious. The reason I didn't remove the bandages entirely is twofold. First, Loki has had a piece of iron on his nose since childhood, and we don't know yet what's that about, but in any case, since it continues beneath the bandages, I wouldn't know where it ends, as it might also surround his eyes, so it was better to keep the bandages. Secondly, Illidan from Warcraft, who has a great resemblance to Loki and also wears bandages around his eyes, is shown with his eyes glowing through the bandages. Illidan can also shoot beams from his eyes, as can one other character with a similar appearance, with wings and horns, Devil Jin from Taken. Although Devil Jin's laser beam is coming out from a crystal and not his eyes directly. So the logic is that Loki, by shooting beams from his eyes, has pierced the bandages. The reason Loki covers his eyes is simply because they terrified his mother when he was born. I have assumed that Loki will join Luffy's crew, something that, as we later saw, Luffy actually did ask for. Loki refused, but it is still too early, and he doesn't yet know who Luffy truly is, whereas Luffy sees who Loki is, since he always recognizes diamonds, even when they are uncut. In short, Luffy is the ideal person to free Loki from his complex about the appearance of his eyes, because surely when he sees them he will act as if he is nothing. Even so, I don't believe that Loki will get rid of the bandages forever, for two reasons. First, this bandaged design around his eyes is already well established, and he has been wearing them since childhood, so he is fully accustomed to them. Moreover, there has been a hint that Loki has developed future sight, and this may be thanks to the fact that he lives as if he were blind, despite not being so, meaning the covered eyes are a form of training. From there, regarding how Loki's eyes resemble a snake's, let's look at one example from another series. In the video game Elden Ring, there is Mesmer the Impaler, a character who has many things in common with Loki. First of all, his eyes are also sealed, yet underneath his eye looks very much like Loki's. He also has long hair and uses a spear, and although Loki uses a hammer, in Harley's mural we see a figure extremely similar to Loki holding a spear. Let's read a few words about Mesmer. He was born to Queen Marika. First, Loki is also born of a queen. Second, Queen Marika in Elden Ring is connected to a tree, which represents the Norse Yggdrasil, as is also the case with Loki at his own homeland. Mesmer's birth was cursed by a dark entity, an evil serpent that threatened to become one with him, known as the Abyssal Serpent. Its suppression was achieved thanks to Marika's intervention, who removed one of her son's eyes and replaced it with the seal of her grace. From his cursed birth, Mesmer kept company with winged serpents that kept the Abyssal Serpent within him under control. Loki too was considered cursed, at least by his mother, and there is certainly something going on with his eyes, which no one else in One Piece has similar. Mesmer was abandoned by his mother in a hostile land, just like Loki was at the realm of the dead, and he is also associated with fire, both because it is said that he has a flame within him which feeds the serpent, and because he uses fire-based attacks. And here we see him committing arson, just like Loki has before. Speaking of fire, let's go back to my design. The reason I assumed his color would be red is because on elbaph there is the legend of the so-called serpent soaked in blood, which could possibly refer to the red line itself that encircles the world of One Piece. But it could also be the corpse of an ancient serpent, like Jormungandr from Norse mythology, who was a serpent and in fact a child of Loki, described as encircling the world. In Harley's mural, we learned that in the first world there existed a massive serpent that was apparently much larger than the skyscraper-like buildings of that era, and this serpent burned that world by spewing flames, another parallel with Loki who burns villages. Now check how everything ties together. When Loki was young, he admired Zebek and told him that he believed he was the sun god, who in the legends of Elbaf was said to destroy the world, while laughing. Zebek replied that he did not want to destroy the world, but to become its king, and that if anything, Loki's father, Harald, would be the one who had the power to do such a thing. And of course, Zebek knew about Elbaf's legendary devil fruit, which was one of the two he considered essential to his plan. Therefore, he most likely knew that this was the fruit of the Serpent of Hellfire, capable of destroying the entire world. Now, as you can see, the Serpent of Hellfire has something like fins or feathers, which is exactly what I have also designed in my version. The reason I chose pink is because of Loki's hair color. Notice how Kaido in his dragon form also had fur that was black, matching his own hair color. So in Loki's case, the fur, or rather feathers, will most likely also be the color of his hair. The reason that, unlike Kaido, I assumed Loki's hybrid form would be serpentine from the waist down is because this is also the case, for example, with Boa Sandersonia, Hancock's sister, who ate the anaconda fruit. The tongue that Loki suspiciously sticks out, I've also designed it snake-like, as in Sandersonia's. The reason I gave him all sharp teeth instead of just two, like Sandersonia and ordinary snakes, is because we're not talking about a classic snake, but something more like a dragon. Notice that in the mural, the Hellfire Serpent has a full set of teeth, instead of just two fangs, like regular snakes. and it also looks far more threatening this way. Finally, here is a connection from the universe of Conan the Barbarian, where Thoth Amon also has similar eyes, as well as the power to control snakes with the ring of Set. Set represents the Egyptian god of the same name, but he is depicted as a serpent and in reality has more in common with the Egyptian god Apep, or Apophis, who is portrayed as a gigantic serpent. The ancient world in One Piece will most likely also have Egyptian elements, in addition to Atlantis, the Maya, Inca and Aztec cultures, as well as the lost continent of Mu. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more.